Hello folks, Brian Kehoe from DUNLOP TV here. Today we are hanging out with Michael League from Snarky Puppy. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about the band. You got 40 guys in a collective. How does that work?
Well, it started with 10 guys at the University of North Texas where we went to college. And basically I don't like saying no to gigs, so I would take gigs without asking whether the guys were available. And when they weren't available, I'd have to get other musicians to play, and it kind of became this family of players that's grown to about 35 guys now, 10 years later.
So what is the original concept for this band?
You know, we were all at jazz school, but I wasn't really interested in playing straight ahead jazz. So I was writing music that was kind of more of a blend of pop and funk and world music.
R&B.
And R&B and gospel and soul and jazz. And got some of my friends together, and now here we are, 10 years later.
So when people ask you, so what do you guys sound like? What do you say?
You know, I just say it's instrumental music. When people say, what kind of music do you play? I just say instrumental music. But even that's not even accurate sometimes, because we've made a record with 8 singers, and we made a record with a singer from Africa.
So when you go out and tour, and you're playing in the band, you are the bass player.
Yes.
And so what kind of gear are you interested in when you're playing?
So I try to think about the sounds I want in my head first, and then find the gear that fits that. Vintage Fender basses are the sound of bass in my head. No, I'm not saying for everyone, I'm saying the way that I hear bass. So it's the same thing with effects pedals.
Do you have a lot of gain stages on your board, like any overdrives or dirt boxes?
Yeah, sure. I mean, basically, like all the effects I have can be put into 3 categories, which is like octavers, which is my favorite. Like filters, like envelope filters or phasers. And then the 3rd category would be like, well, 4 categories. I guess delays and verbs, like spatial effects. And then the 4th one would be distortion or fuzz, dirt. Genuinely, something that I think that's really cool about MXR is that I'm a guitar player and a bass player, right? I think every single MXR guitar pedal that I have sounds great on bass. Like basically my bass pedal board and my guitar pedal board are almost identical, which I think is really cool.
Like I saw your horn players, with the trumpet players playing through a blue box. It sounded, I'm like, what the hell is that? Well, it could have been whatever, but just a killer sound is a killer sound.
Absolutely.
You're the primary songwriter in the band?
Yes.
So what's the process that you go through when you are coming up with a composition, or do you work with a deadline, or what? How does that work with you?
I almost only write music when I'm on a deadline. So astutely, it starts with a deadline and panic and stress. I think the pressure kind of forces ideas out of me, which is cool. I try to think of music non-musically, if that makes sense. I have a lot of devices that I use to write. The first thing that I try to think is, if I were listening to this song in the audience, what would I want to hear next? I start harmonically, then I try to sing a melody. I'm not a good singer, so if I can sing it, probably you can sing it, which means that it's probably simple and hopefully memorable. My goal with this band, and generally in life, is to try to reach people with music.
To a block, everything's kind of sounding the same, man, and you just hit that phase shifter, man, and like sunlight comes on, man. All of a sudden, notes that were just mundane, all of a sudden.